It's intermission time. It's great to get out to the movies.
I'm Megan Braun. I'm the host of the Synagogue podcast, Intermission. And today we have Jeremy Workman. Jeremy, tell the listener who you are, what you do, and where you are right now.
I am a documentary filmmaker through and through. Like, all I do is make documentaries. I don't make scripted movies. I really lean into documentaries. So I am currently where we are is in the secret movie theater apartment. I'm in the office of the Alamo Drafthouse in Los Angeles and talking to you over Zoom, which was, just how we had to do it. And the film that I'm here with is like playing in the theater next door.
I love it. Something I had here was like, in addition to being a documentary director, you're also known for film editing.
I am.
And you're pretty sought after for doing indie and documentary film edits, like for trailers. Is that right?
Totally. So I've had a really interesting career. I started as an editor, mostly short form. I did a lot of Hollywood trailers when I was very young. So I was kind of like recruited by one of the big trailer vendors to do trailers for studio movies. I was doing that for a while. I then transitioned to making my own movies, my own documentaries, and then transitioned to also at the same time editing trailers. And I do that still for a lot of indie movies and docs. I also work in movie marketing a lot. Like, I'll shoot a lot for my two biggest clients are A24 and Neon, and I shoot a lot of interviews for them and movie marketing stuff, and just kind of like nonsense videos that go on social and feature the cast. Yeah. So I do that, and I'm also making my own, because just for your viewers and listeners, there's not much money in documentary filmmaking. So you have to really supplement.
Yeah.
Any aspiring documentary filmmakers, you really got to come find some skills, because you're going to have to supplement.
Valid.
So yeah, that's what I do all the time. So I'm always working on something. My movie came out on Friday, the documentary we're talking about. And at the same time, I was working a ton on Hell of a Summer and shooting tons of stuff with the cast and just kind of videos. If you see social videos with them, I was doing all that.
Fun. I love that. You know what I thought of when I was thinking of movie trailer editing? I don't know if you've seen this, but there's that cheesy holiday rom-com movie with Cameron Diaz.
Yeah,
and what is that called?
Where she's a trailer.
Yeah.
Where she's a trailer producer, and literally everyone who's heard this who has worked in the trailer world is the reference for normies is the holiday. You're
that's
it's
funny.
the holiday.
Yeah, because that's the only time I ever. That's the only
totally.
time
You're
I ever
what?
even
This is a career.
Yeah.
I didn't even know this. I thought the studios just did this. But no, trailers are very specialized, and there's a lot of, very incredible editors that work on trailers all the time.
Sick. So this is a question that we ask every guest that comes on the show. If you were to pick a movie that describes your life right now, what would it be?
Taken, because I have a daughter. No, that's a joke. Leaving Las Vegas, because I drink a lot. No, that's also another bad joke. Okay, the movie that I would describe, I'm going to do a movie that I've never seen. So maybe I don't know. Has anyone done a movie they've never seen?
I'm sure everyone lies.
Okay, I'm sure everybody lies. Okay, so I'm going to go with a movie from the 80s called Chopping Mall.
Okay. Oh.
Okay. Yeah. So Chopping Mall was a genre movie of in the mid 80s that I think Roger Corman's, maybe his daughter produced. It was a movie where it was a killer mall. I'm sure some of your listeners and viewers and fans know this movie. And it was robots were killing people in a mall, and it's basically a killer mall. Mm-hmm. So obviously appropriate. I just did a mall movie, and it literally is killing me, and I'm just running around like a maniac, and I feel like I'm being destroyed by this mall. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Chopping Mall, from the 1980s. Good.
I was thinking, what is that movie that just came out? Actually, Olivia, our producer, I saw it with her, and I think it was A24, and it's about I think it's called Y2K. And it's
oh yeah, so perfect example. I was on set of that. I shot all the interviews for that.
Those were cool. Did you do they made
I didn't do
fake...
anything. I didn't do anything cool on it. I just did the uncool stuff on that, where I was I was interviewing a lot of the cast, and
Okay,
then I
cool.
shot, the director and the creator, and did a lot of that. So
Yeah,
yeah, but that's like,
in the
it's
vein.
killer machines. So yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to get into our section for getting to know you through your movie taste.
Cool.
Your documentaries often film artists, eccentrics, outsiders, like with very intense passions. What made you want to
Yeah.
focus on those types of characters and communities?
Yeah, I guess, I've now done, five features or something. Maybe, I mean, and a couple or long shorts. I guess I don't know if we'd count as a features, but just like a whole body of work at this point. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them they focus on people with just like hardcore passions. I did a movie called The World Before Your Feet. It was about a
Mm-hmm.
37-year-old guy who's walking every street of New York City. It's all he does. He lives off $5 a day. He has decided that this is his purpose in life, and he quit his job just to do this. So I made that movie. I did a documentary called LILY Topples the World, which is about the world's greatest domino toppling artist, and Lily Hevish, who in some circles is like this like huge role model for nerdy, boys and girls across the world. And she's also somebody who's like, just totally kind of obsessive about her domino toppling. And I did that. And now I have this new movie that's also about like crazy artists. Yeah, I guess, I maybe I relate. I always think like watching people who are passionate is really interesting on screen. Maybe it's that.
Do you feel like you have like an eclectic passion yourself? Or is it your work that is that?
I think it's probably my work. I definitely feel like I get a lot of people being like, oh, obsessive subjects, obsessive director. I feel like I've heard that before. So yeah, maybe it's, I feel a connection or, sometimes like at scripted movies, it's hard to convey passion on screen. Like, it cuts to somebody and he's like really intense and there's a montage of him being really intense. But I feel like documentaries are really good at like capturing the process of being an artist or an obsessive and, somebody who has like tons of passion. And yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
love that. That's probably why I want to make movies, and why I wanted to make movies.
So something I've always thought about with documentaries, I like consume a lot of documentaries, is
Nice.
where do you guys find these subjects? You know what I mean? Like these people, are
Totally.
you on like Reddit or are you just very well connected?
I mean, I think that's like an underrated part of being like a documentary filmmaker. You have to kind of like really kind of be out there and just kind of like look for stories. Always be like for years I've always been like kind of almost like development, like my own development, and just like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what are cool stories? What are things that are interesting? And just like meeting people, being like very open. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like a pretty curious person. So like I often, I'm outgoing and I meet people and I think that's part of it is just kind of like being really open to hearing stuff and
Yeah.
probably also great for anyone, just to kind of, look at the world that way. And,
Yeah.
even if you're a writer or whatever. So yeah, I've always on my projects found my own subjects, which I don't know if every doc filmmaker. Some work with teams and that, but I tend to look and find.
Yeah, I feel like you kind of have to be the person who's like at a bar or restaurant and just starts like chatting up the person next to you.
Totally, which is how we'll talk about my movie Secret Mall Apartment, but that's how that came about. I was like chatting with the
That's
person,
funny.
like the random person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
cool.
totally.
So, as someone who does movie editing yourself in your work, do you watch a trailer before you go to the movies?
Yeah, yeah.
Always?
I always watch. Yeah, I love trailers. So like I have friends who are like, there's spoilers and they damage the experience of watching a movie. And my attitude is like trailers are part of the experience of
Mm-hmm.
like embracing a movie. So like if there's a cool movie that I want to see, like, some new, big cool movie that's coming out this summer, like I want to see the trailer and kind of that's part of my viewing process, even if it's like months before,
Mm-hmm.
So like something cool is coming out. I'm like, oh, wow, the new P.T. Anderson trailer dropped. I want to see that. like, I know people that are like, no, I got to
Like,
cover
it'll
my
spoil
eyes.
it.
Yeah. And it'll spoil. I don't want to know anything. And I totally respect that. I get that. But I'm also like, no, part of the process for me of enjoying a movie is sort of the long timeline. Like, I remember copying the Titanic trailer on like VHS and just like watching. I mean, it wasn't like the VHS era, but like I copied the Titanic trailer because I was just so pumped for that movie. And I was just watching that trailer like repeatedly before the movie came out. It made my experience of watching Titanic like even more exciting, you know?
Yeah.
Again, I know Titanic's not in vogue for some crowds these days. But
I've talked about Titanic actually a weird amount of times on here, and specifically the VHS, which is funny that you said that because I have a vivid memory of owning the two parts. Of course, Titanic was so long, you know.
Totally.
That's like what I talk about on here a few times because it was like one of the first sex scenes I had ever seen in a movie.
Oh, nice, totally. Sure.
I was like steamy.
You were like getting down. All right.
Something I'm always curious about.
Distracted by Titanic sex scenes. Sorry. sorry.
Something I always think about when I have people come on and they have like a certain niche or of what they do is if it taints that for them. So like, do you feel like you are someone who prefers consuming feature films, like scripted films rather than documentaries because you're in the documentary world?
Well, I'm an avid like film nut, you know, and I've always been. And I think maybe I don't want to speak for like other documentary filmmakers in the documentary community, but like maybe like there's not a lot of us that our entry point is scripted movies. So I was like hardcore cinephile, like movie buff, you know, on scripted movies, you know, fiction. And again, your listeners are like, why does he keep calling them scripted movies? Because I separate nonfiction and fiction, and I'm kind of adamant about that distinction. You know, some people call them like narrative movies. Well, documentaries are narratives, so I call them either fiction or scripted movies. Anyway, so my entry was always that, and I was always just consuming a ton of movies all during the, you know, when I was young in the 80s and the 90s and the, you know, just so I still watch a ton of documentaries, but I think like my vantage point is maybe more fiction movies in a way. Again, we'll talk about Secret Mall Apartment, but I've told people like the movie that inspired that the most is Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and not like people are like, oh, what's the documentary? And I'm like, well, it's sort of, you know, I'm thinking more scripted stuff and about the movie going experience. That's really important to me. I kind of like think about like that experience that people have when they go see, you know, whatever, The Thing, and like that experience as a viewer, and how like a documentary sometimes doesn't try to kind of create that experience for a viewer. It's very, documentaries are more about, you know, journalism or social issue. And I'm always like, no, it should be closer to The Thing.
Speaking of, wait, you said not narrative films. You said what scripted or fiction. Yeah. Okay. What do you like to consume? Do you have a specific genre you're drawn towards or directors you typically go
I mean,
to?
I think it's a lot of the, you know, the great go-tos, whether it's 70s, you know. I also have like a big bent on old studio stuff. So like kind of 1940s studio stuff, noir, I'm really interested in. I'm a huge Western guy. I know that's like about as uncool as you could say these days.
I feel like actually, I beg to differ because I'm not a big Western person. I don't know much Westerns, but every time we have someone talk on the show about genres that they're missing in their repertoire or whatever, they always say Western. So I feel like it's sick to be in that corner.
Like Westerns are, I mean, all like the, you know, whether it's like Michael Mann or John Carpenter, you know, they're all kind of like coming out of that kind of Western thing. So like, yeah, of course I'm like a huge Leone fan and you know, but also I think I kind of had a period where it was a lot of, you know, foreign films, like a lot of people, these days, funny. I'm watching a ton of Korean movies.
Cool.
Because I'm doing a documentary in Korea right now.
Oh, I have that in my notes somewhere.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we could talk about it,
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, my new project is so different from my other stuff, and I've been doing a project in Korea, so I've been like watching like a ton of Korean movies. Park Chan-wook and all that kind of stuff. Just so good. Yeah. So, but yeah, like pretty much anything. Like I feel like a lot of genre stuff. I'm not really a horror guy. I mean, obviously, I've seen the greats, but I'm not really a horror guy. More a lot of '70s stuff, that kind of stuff. Thrillers, Friedkin.
Did you grow up watching movies, or like how did you get into this world?
I grew up in LA. Okay, so I now live in it's a weird. I guess it's not weird, but it's an unusual because I live in New York, but I grew up in LA. I grew up in Topanga Canyon. So people in LA are like, whoa, that's weird. Yeah, it was weird. It was, for people that are hearing this or watching, Topanga is like this kind of hippie area of LA. And that's where I grew up.
So granola.
Yeah, it sucked. I hated it. So, and also,
wait, you hated it?
I hated it because it was like so far removed. It wasn't cool when I was growing up. I couldn't drive, so I was like stuck in this weird.
Didn't Lenny Kravitz used to live there? Or did I just make that up?
No, I'm pretty sure he was there.
Because that's like
there was
his
always
vibe.
there was always that vibe like going on.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, oh, there's somebody, But yeah, so like I was there and I was like kind of like often felt like I was like stranded there because I didn't, when I didn't drive, I was like really removed. I was like in the mountains of the canyons of LA. So I was definitely like somebody just firing DVDs and VHSs like constantly. And that, I think that kind of informed a lot of just what I was thinking and watching. And, it was anything, so if it was like in, the 90s, I'm like watching, whatever, Army of Darkness or, 12 Monkeys or whatever, just constantly.
I love that
just
movie.
Like tons of movies just around Cape Fear, Carlito's Way, those were a lot of movies that I was watching at that time.
Cool. So being a documentarian isn't that like not outlandish, but like that big of a risk then, because you're coming from a town that's like that is in the ether.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of like thinking about.
Maybe it sounds like I'm downplaying your career. I just meant like that was like it was like something that was it was the world you grew up in a bit.
I grew up in like a funky, weird, sub village of LA. So like, now I make documentaries often about like funky, weird, people that are doing weird stuff. And maybe there's some connection there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah,
cool.
Totally.
What is a movie related hill you're willing to die on? So like, I always try to get people to say hot takes in relation to like the world of watching movies, whether that's like literally the movie watching experience or about movies or Hollywood culture, whatever.
Well, I'm not a Christopher Nolan fan whatsoever, and I, probably a million people just clicked off right now. Maybe not a million, but half your viewers just clicked off. I find his movies give me a headache. I can't follow them. I find it just mumbly. I can't follow the dialogue. I mean, okay, like, I have to watch every single one of his movies with subtitles. And even then, I still can't follow it. I tried to watch Dunkirk twice. I couldn't follow it at all. I did like Oppenheimer, but I also was like, this is long. It's mumbly. It feels like it's very hard to just, it's just not moving it in like a tight way for me. I find Inception to give me a headache. I joke that Inception's like, like in college, everybody's like has those posters of like MC Escher, those like where you see like the stairwell and it's like all these different angles. I'm like, that's what I feel like when I watch his movies. I just am like, I'm not feeling it. I'm just like, I get it. There's great shots. There's great scenes. There's a great feel, but I have yet to love any of his movies. Interstellar, I cannot watch. I literally cannot get through that movie.
So funny.
Yeah,
I
so
love
that's
it.
so that's a hill that I'm sure everybody disagrees on, but you know, yeah, exactly, I'll die on it.
Okay, so now we're gonna get into your documentary, Secret
All
Mall
right.
Apartment. I have like a little description here I'll read. In 2003, 8 Rhode Islanders created a secret apartment inside a busy mall and lived there for 4 years, filming everything along the way. Far more than a prank, the secret apartment became a deeply meaningful place for all involved. And I saw also that you worked with Jesse Eisenberg again. You guys had also
Yes.
worked together on that, The World Before Your Feet.
Correct. So Jesse is a producer on Secret Mall Apartment. He's a friend of mine. And he's really been great and incredibly supportive of like my career and my work and really getting behind it. What's been so funny with Jesse and amazing is and yeah, nobody needs to blow smoke up, but like, you know, a famous person, but like he's really like comes out and supports the stuff in a way that you would be really surprised. Like The World Before Your Feet, that's the one about the guy walking every street. Jesse was a producer on it. He did like 25, 30 Q&As.
Wow.
I mean, just think about that for a second. It's not like he just showed up at a premiere at some flashy film festival. He was like at the 5:20 show on a Wednesday doing Q&As.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then when we did Secret Mall Apartment, I started to show him footage and he just loved it. And he was like, I want to be involved in this one again. I'll do whatever it takes. He is directing a new movie that went into production literally today. It's a Julianne Moore musical. It went into production today. And yet, so today is a Thursday. On Saturday and Sunday, Jesse did 4 Q&As for Secret Mall Apartment. So that's like, yeah, crazy. That's like 4 days before he's going into production on a new movie that he's directing. That's really cool. And he wrote. So yeah, he's just like really supportive. I feel really blessed and privileged and honored that he's, kind of throwing his fairy dust at these projects. And I think for him, he just loves supporting cool movies that maybe aren't going to get noticed. And he, I think he really enjoys also this, like, he doesn't have to go out and like talk about his own stuff, or he doesn't have to talk about, how great a script was for, Now You See Me Too or whatever. He's like, he could go out and really kind of stand behind something that he wants to, that's not about himself. So yeah, it's super cool.
That's sweet. That's a really cool pairing that you guys have.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to kind of what we meant, or I guess you mentioned earlier, of finding out about this story and finding this group of Rhode Islanders.
So this is a crazy story. That like almost like the description, like almost like barely does it justice in a way. Like from 2003 to 2007, these artists, troublemakers, instigators, whatever you want to call them, they lived in Providence, Rhode Island. They were mad about a mall that moved into their town, a big ass mall. The biggest construction project in the history of Rhode Island. Mm-hmm. And it's called the Providence Place Mall, and it's still there. Everybody in Providence and Rhode Island knows it. Most people in New England know it. And they were mad about the gentrification and the development that was happening because of this mall. All these people got displaced, literally hundreds of people. And they wanted to do something, and they snuck into the mall, and they found a space that was 700 square feet. And it was this nowhere space that was not on any blueprints. It was like in the bowels of the building. Like you had to go through chasms and on I-beams. And they found this space, and they decided that they would move in and take it over. And they kept it going for 4 years. 4 years.
So crazy.
It's so crazy. And they also filmed everything along the way. And they filmed it with these point and shoot cameras from 2003 that they bought at Radio Shack in the mall for $100. And they filmed the whole thing. They filmed the whole thing for nearly the whole time. And it's incredible footage. You're just cannot believe it. They're bringing in furniture. They're interacting with the mall. They're going in and out. They're recording their conversations. Their conversations are about why they're doing it. They talk about gentrification. They talk about art. And they decide at one point to build a wall made out of cinder blocks, like hundreds of cinder blocks. Literally, no exaggeration, hundreds of cinder blocks. They brought in 2 tons of cinder blocks and decided to build a wall. And this all was happening in a busy mall, like
So
not
funny.
a busy freaking mall.
Such a
That was
good
all this
foresight
was
for
going
them
on, and they
to
were
be
doing
able
it
to,
and
like-
kind of dodging
Like, they
security.
basically were
and it's
making their
all
own
on film.
documentary, and
So,
then it's
you know,
just-
they were recording. They weren't thinking they would use the footage for a documentary. So like these are also these really committed artists, right? And they weren't like, oh, let's film this. This will be a great documentary. No, it was almost the opposite. They filmed it and then they stashed it in hard drives, and the hard drive sat around for 17 years and nobody saw it until I got my hands on it. And there were just like these kind of like crazy artists who feel like they work in these kind of weird fringes of art genres, you know, temporary art and public art and you know, this kind of performance art kind of, you know, protest thing. And they would just record what they were doing as a habit. And it's incredible footage. Like you're just like, you can't, it looks fake because you're just like, they're bringing in a couch and dodging security. And then you're like, wait, this is real. This is wild.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy though? They shot it on this camera and it wasn't a video camera. It was like some $100 stills camera. The footage is 320 by 240, 8 frames a second. So, you know, that's worse. It's way worse than VHS.
That's
and yet,
funny.
Yeah. And yet it doesn't really matter because they're what they got was so good that it doesn't really matter. You're just kind of like watching. You just can't believe your eyes.
How did you meet them?
So they had this was a story that's like Providence legend, Providence lore, you know, and a lot of people under 30 didn't really know about it, but anyone over 30 knew about this. Again, this happened in the early 2000s, and they got caught, and it, you know, that's not a spoiler. They got caught. It became like a big story in Providence. And then for years, people kind of like wanted to do a movie on this. There was even like production companies that were like, let's do a scripted version of this. And they just kept on turning it down for years. They were just like, no, we're these, you know, committed, you know, individuals. We're not making some crappy movie. So I don't know maybe it was like the time was right. And they had just done a podcast, a pretty great podcast called 99% Invisible, where they talked about it. And that was in 2017 or something. So maybe they were like starting to like, you know, put the word out. And then I met the main guy, Michael. I was in Greece, Athens, Greece. Yeah, it's so random. And I'm filming for another documentary of mine called LILY Topples the World. That's the one about this domino artist. And I'm filming Lily. She was doing a collab with Erno Rubik, the creator of the Rubik's Cube. And literally, like, she's like doing a domino toppling thing with this 80-year-old Hungarian who created the Rubik's Cube. So it was just so random. And the building that we were in was covered in tape art. Okay. So your viewers and listeners are like, what the hell is tape art? Tape art is masking tape art that the main character of Secret Mall Apartment, it's like his personal genre. He like makes these incredible murals with masking tape, and they are incredible. Like painters, like kind of like that blue painter's tape. Yeah. And I saw it and I just was like, this is incredible. And just like you said earlier, you know, like a lot of my movies are about artists and obsessives, and you know, I'm curious. Another question, like, how do you find subjects? Well, this building was covered in crazy tape art. I was like, I got to meet this person. Turned out he was the person that lived in the secret apartment, and then we became friends. Yeah, and I think they all felt like a little bit of a trust, maybe a kinship with me. You know, another underrated part of making documentaries, like we talked about finding subjects, but then another underrated part is like, kind of not convincing them or twisting anyone's arm, but like earning the trust of subjects. You're putting their life on screen, you know, you're filming them. It's really invasive. You're running around, like I run around with cameras. I'm like behind them all the time. It's absurd. So I think just that notion of like, they felt like, okay, this guy, you know, he's on our level. Let's give it a shot. And then I had to convince all 8 of them. So it wasn't just the one. I had to convince all 8 And that became like a year process. Yeah, it was difficult.
Wow.
Yeah. But then they, and as you saw the movie, it kind of gets into these like deeper textures about like what they're doing. And it's really interesting what they're doing beyond the secret apartment. And that was probably why they felt excited by me as well, because I was like, I'm really jazzed about this other stuff you guys are doing too, not just this insane, like sensational, amazing prank. I love the prank, but it was also cool that they were doing all this other stuff too.
Definitely. Did you get access to all the footage right away?
Yeah, I think I did. I got, they started to give me the hard drives. And again, no one had really seen it. And so it was the secret apartment. And then as people, who've seen the movie, it also goes into all these other art projects they do that are also incredible. Like bandit, secret art projects, or they're going into like, they're doing these like volunteer kind of charity projects for no money. They're going into hospitals and doing tape art for like sick children. And they're doing memorials for 9/11 victims, all secret. No, just literally nobody, no money, no acclaim, nothing. And so they also had all that footage too. And nobody had seen that either. So it was just amazing. Like it was incredible just getting that. And then I did something kind of interesting in the edit, which is I had another editor, Paul Murphy, who's a great editor that worked with me. And I siloed him. I was like, here's all this footage. You go edit this incredible stuff. I'll go over here and edit other scenes, and we won't even look at each other's footage. Yeah. So we were just smart. It was like a weird experiment.
Because I was going to ask like because I bet you had so much given to you, then like what got left on the cutting room floor that you're like, oh, I wish that might have stuck in there. Oh, okay.
Yeah, one thing. I mean, I'm really like adamant about like, well, when you make a documentary, put the best stuff in. And, we've all heard like, oh, you got to kill your babies, you got to get it tighter. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. But like, I also really want to make sure that like the best stuff is in the movie. And maybe that's from having done trailers, the best stuff I always wanted to be in the movie. However, there's one thing that was didn't make the movie. That was this footage of them running around in the mall in the middle of the night. And it was so dark. It was pitch black. And this is footage that was so low quality. Like it's so low quality that like pitch black footage it didn't hold up. It just, you couldn't see anything. You couldn't really know that it was the middle of the night at the mall. Like, I think it was 3 a.m. They said, no, it was 10 p.m. But I think it was like 3 a.m. But that was the only thing that is not in the movie that I would have put in.
I like that. It purely though, just because of like, it's hard
technical.
To see.
Yeah. Technical. I was like, we could try to put this in.
What a fun thing to do, though. Run.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, this is incredible. This idea that people are running around in a mall in the middle of the night. And
that sounds like it's the best time.
I know. It's there's a movie, a pretty obscure movie now from the 80s called Night of the Comet. Have you ever heard of this? Okay. And it was like there's a comet coming to hit the world, and everyone's. I sort of don't remember it, but everybody, it's going to be the end of the world. And these teenagers go into a mall, and they basically are living in the mall and waiting out their last days. And they're basically running around alone in the mall. And that was it was almost like that, their Night of the Comet.
So fun.
But yeah, it's wild.
So this event took place early 2000s. Do you think like something like this could happen today or no, because of all like cameras?
No chance could it happen today. Like one is the security cameras everywhere. Two is also like we have cameras. This was a time when they were the only ones running around with cameras. I think I heard that when they either like when they got caught or right around they got caught, that's when the iPhone was introduced. And now everybody films everything. So like I think it would also be a situation where like if you saw some guy in the parking lot carrying a couch on his head.
Yeah, that would have gone viral.
I mean? You would take a photo of that and be like, oh my God, homie's running around with a couch and going through alarms. And like that would just get him caught instantly. And so I don't think it at all could happen at all. They went 4 years in a business.
It's so insane.
It's just so insane.
Yeah.
and they had a kitchen and a TV, and they were playing PlayStation, and they were going in and out of it, and it's wild.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up the section on your film and move to our next one. But final question for this movie. If you were to describe it in 3 words, how would you describe your documentary?
I would say it is bonkers, ridiculous, profound. It's one of those things where it kind of like very much switches gears on you. You sort of go in thinking like, okay, this is just this ridiculous bonkers thing. And then it switches gears and you're like, wait, is there something deep going on here? Oh shit. So that I'll go with that.
Very cool. And for the listener, when and where can they see this documentary?
So we're doing something that is, I think cool and bold and I hope can be a talking, I just think it's cool, and I hope people can see it and kind of feel what we're trying to do, which is documentaries don't come out in theaters. We all see documentaries on streaming sites, and in some ways they're kind of segregated from movies in terms of theaters. You don't usually see them. Well, we're trying to do something different. We're trying to put this in theaters, and we purposely were like, let's now do a theatrical and lean into that in a big way. So we're releasing across the United States, and as we speak, it's playing in a lot of major cities, and it's going to continue going broad, and it's just theatrical right now. So anyone could go to like secretmalapartment.com and they could see like the 100 of cities that we're already booking with it. And we really, I as we've talked, this, even you're what you're about, we really believe in like the movie theater experience, and it's something that you don't get anymore. And we saw an opportunity to be like, let's try to do that with a documentary and see what happens. And if we fall on our face, then so be it. But let's try to do it. So we're just going theatrical. That's it. We're not even talking about streaming. We're just like, it's in theaters. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
And that kind of just feels true to like, I bet the people that the story is about, I bet they enjoyed that.
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. And also I don't need to go into it too much, but a crazy twist is that we premiered at the Providence Place Mall. We premiered in the movie theater where this all took place, in the mall where this took place. And people were watching it in our premiere, and 200 feet below the movie theater is where the secret apartment is. It's crazy. Yeah. Meta. So like we also were like, we don't need to premiere in LA. We're not premiering in New York. We're premiering in Providence at the mall. And that took a year to navigate that and make sure that get that to happen. A year.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Worth it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. So now we're going to get into your Criterion closet picks. I have here.
Oh, nice.
You had given, I think, your top 5, or we have 5 here. Letter Never Sent, F for Fake.
Oh, yeah.
Blast of Silence, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and Crumb is what I have
random. Here. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like picks always kind of have to, because it's like different parts of your personality and where your head goes.
Yeah, there are different parts of my brain completely. I mean, you're probably seeing I'm like sort of, kind of a spaz anyway. So like that, there's 5, those are 5 movies. They're all like different genres. So you want me to run through them?
Yeah. Tell me a bit about why you picked these.
So we have The Letter Never Sent, which sometimes is called Unsent Letter, which is an obscure Russian movie, from the early 60s. And it's in that tradition of like the most insane survival story where these people go searching. It's incredible. And they go searching they're in Siberia, and they're basically they're miners, they're traveling through Siberia, and then a fire hits and they get lost, and they're basically struggling to stay alive. And it's just like one of those, it's the genre of, a couple people in the middle of nowhere dealing with, the natural kind of situation. It's kind of like The Revenant before The Revenant. And
Yeah,
it's,
okay.
I know. Like I was watching The Revenant, and I was like, "Oh, you watched The Letter Never Sent. I see what you're doing here. You watch that because it just has the most insane stuff that that could have been filmed, and it was at a time in Russia where they were just kind of like making crazy movies. So yeah, it's very obscure, but people should seek that one out because it like out Revenants The Revenant.
Sweet. Okay, next we have F for Fake.
F for Fake. So this is an late Orson Welles movie in the 70s that was really influential for me. So a lot of people don't know this one, or maybe they do, but we all know Orson Welles. Everybody knows his movies. But in the late 70s, he was kind of at this weird stage in his career where he was like chasing down movies and making weird movies and always like chasing down money. And he made this documentary called F for Fake, which is essentially a documentary about a forger. But the whole movie's like meta, and you're like, is it real? Is this fake? And there's all this kind of playful side to it where you're watching it and you're kind of like wondering, is this real? What am I watching? And it's constantly like playing with the audience and kind of in this meta kind of way where it's kind of tricking you a little bit. And it's got all these like tricks up its sleeve, so it's a little bit like watching like a magician who's just kind of like doing all kinds of like tricks with his hands. And, it's incredible. So Secret Mall Apartment does a little of that, but not nearly as well or as incredible as F for Fake. So yeah, that's another really cool one. Very different from like how people think of Orson Welles too.
And then we have Blast of Silence.
Blast of Silence. This is another obscurio. God, people are going to be like, what are these movies?
Well,
Blast of Silence.
Everyone needs to get like movie recs, random movies to watch.
Yeah, these are random. So Blast of Silence is, is a crazy low budget, New York noir from like the 60s that looks like it was made for, what would be like now like $25,000. And it looks like it was made by somebody who's like, just like a drug addled, kind of movie lover. And it plays like this really weird crime movie set in New York, but it's filmed really inexpensively. So it's using all these like real sets, real locations, real people. And in the middle of that is this story of like, a crime and killers and hitmen and guns. And so it's just like this wild movie that like, I can't even really place it because it's like a crime movie set in a city, but it's also like super low budget and weird. And you're just like, watching this movie, you're like, wow, they clearly got no permission here. They got no, nothing. And they're just kind of making this movie in the early 60s. So it's almost like, it feels like more like a movie like that. I don't know, like, an edgy movie that somebody would make now, and they would do it for no budget and get no clearances and would just go make. And that's what it is. But it was in the early 60s, and it's just wild.
Next, we have Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which I think would probably be like the most well-known.
Yeah, we have one that like is not some obscurio. I love Fast Times. I also, it's a great mall movie, so I'm also super. Oh yeah. Of course, it's mall genre. So great mall scene. I love Fast Times. That director's awesome. Her stuff's so good. And, just great movie. It's like, it's also really like, it gets really kind of deep about, being a teenager and the struggles of teenagers and the confusion of teenagers. And it's so funny. It's like one of my favorite movies. It's like such an influence too.
That movie's cool too, because I feel like it's really hits a lot of different generations. Like it doesn't, the target audience isn't just the audience that it came out with. Like it still resonates, I think, to younger viewers, which is sweet.
Totally. Yeah. There's a few like teen movies from the 80s that feel like they kind of still hold up. Fast Times feels like one. Not all the John Hughes stuff. Some of the John Hughes stuff feels kind of a little dated, 16 Candles.
Yeah, I think that like younger generations are also very like hypersensitive to things that are like cancelable. So they're like
totally. So I think Ferris Bueller's Fast Times, those both like really hold up in terms of like the teen 80s genres, and
Yeah.
then, and I think that, I just love also how Fast Times is this kind of ensemble. It's,
Yeah. I
it's
love an
about like,
ensemble.
yeah, it's got like 5 characters and they're all incredible. And, they all have amazing scenes. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's even more than 5. They all have amazing scenes. And, I think that's really kind of an underrated part too. It's not like, yeah, of course, Clueless is awesome, but Clueless is, more rooted in like, here's the main character, here's the
Mm-hmm.
friend, where Fast Times is like this ensemble, and it's just like juggling them all, really great.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible movie.
You
I love Fast Times. Yeah.
you had just mentioned like mall culture with this movie and obviously your documentary, and it was making me think how like me and my friends talk about this, how like when I grew up, mall culture was still a thing. Like we'd go to the mall and like go to the movies at the mall, but mall culture's dead now. And it's just like the movie theaters and mall culture, like there needs to be more spaces for young people who are like not gonna be at
Totally.
a bar to be together, you know?
Totally. It's kind of like a loss, and
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten really interested in mall culture and mall
Yeah.
nostalgia, and it has a lot to do with
Yeah.
this movie. And you watch a movie like Fast Times or whatever, and you're just like, oh wow, that the mall was this place. And a lot of us who experienced it, I didn't so
Mm-hmm.
much in LA. The Santa Monica place, I was in the Galleria a lot, so I was the Beverly Center. These were like real malls, and like you
Mm-hmm.
would as a youngster, they were this place you could go to. And,
Mm-hmm.
it was sort of that third space that's kind of like we don't really have anymore, and especially for
Yeah.
youth,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
so many of us, like if you grew up with a mall, that's where you'd go and you'd watch your movies and you'd have your first boyfriend there and you'd
Mm-hmm.
go get food and, your first, so many people are like, yeah, my first kiss was in a mall,
A
you
thousand
know?
percent. Yeah. It's like where you had freedom and your parents like often would just like drop you off and trust that you would just walk around for a few hours and like
Totally. I
come get you
remember seeing like
later.
Top Gun at the mall,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like young, and it was like I was probably too young for it. And just like it was
Yeah.
such like an indelible experience of not just seeing a movie, but like going into this place, and it was kind of safe. It
Mm-hmm.
was like there were my friends there, people I knew. You'd see somebody from across. So those scenes, like when you see those kind of scenes in movies now, they just really pop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Movie theaters, I think malls, I think like no one like roller skates. Just like I think there needs to be more places of community for
Yeah.
people of that generation. And like movie theaters are still an option. I just wish there was. I mean, obviously, it's like half the point of this podcast. I just want to build community about going to the movies. Um, yeah. Anywho, that's my
Yeah,
tangent.
it's totally like, yeah, different time, but yeah, there was some incredible mall movies. So
um, okay, wait. I have your last movie here, Crumb.
Crumb. So I have to put. I had to do a documentary. Crumb was just so important for me. It's this incredible documentary on our Crumb, but it also, something that it really spoke to me was how, yes, it's about this one artist, and Crumb was this incredible, like, kind of graphic artist and zine artist and counterculture figure, but it also goes into like his brothers, and it gets really, really deep about about the siblings and the issues that they had and the trauma that they'd gone through, and it's just so good. So yeah, just a great documentary that still holds up today and is now probably over 25 years old.
Cool. I'm gonna add that to my watch list. I have not seen.
It's so good. Yeah, it's just
Um,
really, really good.
okay, I have my last section of we're gonna play Would You Rather.
Oh man.
So for Would You Rather, I'm going to list iconic locations or homes from different movies, and I want you to pick which one you'd rather live in.
Okay. Okay.
So first we have the Overlook Hotel from The Shining or Bates
Wow.
Motel from Psycho.
Okay, this is a great question. I'm gonna go with. I think I'm gonna go with Overlook Hotel.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about becoming an axe wielding murderer. I feel like I would be okay in there. I would keep myself busy, and there's just so much incredible stuff. So I think I'd be. I would. I think I would love it.
Go through the
I'd love the
maze.
winter. Yeah, I'd love the outdoor, the topiary maze. Yeah, it's incredible. So I think I would not be freaked out. I would be fine, and I would love it. One thing I would add, having spent a lot of time alone as an editor, I'm fine with alone time, so I think I'd be good there.
Yeah, me too, actually. I'm great at entertaining myself.
Yeah.
Okay, next we have the Parasite basement, like the downstairs from the movie Parasite, or Pan's Labyrinth.
Definitely Parasite's basement, because that, and funny enough, there's a bunch of people that are like, oh, this, your secret mall apartment, the movie I was thinking of was Parasite. Just because there are these people that go into this house and then they become part of it. And there's something similar going on with the people that go into this mall and secret mall apartment. I love that movie. I think it's so good. And it just that, living that idea of going in and, I Guillermo del Toro to also another hill that I would die on, but we don't need to go into that. But yes, definitely on that one, it's definitely Parasite.
Okay,
we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay, I got where that was going. Okay. Next we have the Tenenbaum House from the Royal Tenenbaums, or the Grand Budapest Hotel.
Wow. Another one, I'd say Grand Budapest Hotel. Again, like the Overlook Hotel. It's just so incredible. All the different spots, all the different places to go, the look of it. I would just love, I love places that kind of create, weird offshoot spaces and, places that are, odd spaces in architecture. I love that. I think Secret Mall Apartments about that. It's kind of also where I am right now. So yeah, I think, literally, I think Grand Budapest Hotel would just, I think what I'm learning is I would love to live in a hotel. I think I just learned that.
Self-discovery.
Totally.
Twin Peaks versus Club Silencio from Mulholland Drive.
Twin Peaks. Yeah. And if we were on my normal Zoom, like I have a stupid Zoom in my apartment in New York where I have like a cheapo green screen, and I put myself in the Twin Peaks.
Cute. I like that.
Yeah.
That's
so
nice.
I'm already doing that, so you don't have to worry. But yeah, and it's got that, like, the look of what that Twin Peaks space was. Yeah.
That's cute. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, the Eraserhead apartment versus
the
Videodrome TV studio.
Okay, I really dislike Videodrome.
Really?
I need to probably give it another look.
Do you not like body horror?
I do like body horror. I just hated Videodrome.
I just actually watched it for the first time this year.
Really? How was it? Because I probably need to rewatch it.
I feel like we had talked about it so much on this podcast. I was like, okay, like I'm way behind. I need to see it. I liked it. I like weird things. I liked it a lot.
I love Cronenberg. I love some of that early Cronenberg too. It's really awesome and weird. But Videodrome, I just kind of found boring a little bit.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I think it was that. I just kind of never could get into it. But again, I haven't seen it for over a decade. But that was my take where I was like, I'm not feeling Videodrome. Wait, what was the other one?
The Eraserhead apartment.
Oh, yeah, that's so weird. Yeah, that's a hard one to also want to live in too. Yeah, I love Eraserhead. I'm going to go with Eraserhead.
Okay. And then final, we have the Scott Pilgrim apartment, or the Being John Malkovich 7.5 floor.
I mean, having just made a documentary about a space that doesn't exist on blueprints, that people live in for 4 years and just, it's part of some weird building. We're going to have to go with the Being John Malkovich floor, that, 7.5 floor that they sneak in to go into.
Perfect.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, I wrote down right before you hopped on here a couple documentaries I like, and I'm going to close out with, I'm going to tell you these. They're all pretty, I feel like, common documentaries. Okay. And then I want you to give me a recommendation of a documentary I should watch.
Cool.
And me and the listener. Okay, so I wrote 3 Identical Strangers.
Great one.
For like the psychological, it's like the nature versus nurture story.
It's so good. It also does that thing where like you go in, you're like, oh, this is going to be this really kind of
It's such a
fun,
pivot.
crazy story. And then it pivots and gets really deep, and it's about like identity and adoption and, just goes really deep. That's a great movie. I love Three Identical Strangers. I think it's really, in a way, it's underrated now.
I'm
It's
obsessed with
it's
it.
become, yeah, it's almost like in a way, like I said, it's become underrated. It used to, even though it did so well, it just people kind of like write it off a little bit.
Next, Streetwise by Martin Bell, the story of like the teenagers living on the streets of Seattle.
Yeah, that's a classic, incredible.
I feel like all of these are
going
to be like really like maybe generic documentaries.
No, I don't think so. I think that every documentary, there it's not at all. Streetwise is not. It's it's kind of a little bit maybe not seen so much by kind of current generation. So I think it's a great pick.
And this next one is obviously like not a film, it's a series, but The Jinx. I think The Jinx was just incredible. And I love crime. I'm like the stereotypical woman who loves watching crime. So yeah, The Jinx. I have Searching for Sugar Man, that story about
Searching for Sugar Man's incredible.
Yeah. And then
I mean it's amazing. It's another one of these movies where it's like you go in and you're like, okay, this going to be this kind of music story, and it becomes something like so much more about the life and the world we live in, and just, choices that we make as people. That movie's great.
I'm going to say just two more, and then you're going to have to give me a recommendation.
Okay.
My second to last one is kind of not one, but many, the Up series.
Sure.
For those listening, it was filmed every 7 years with the same group of 14 people. I think that was just such a cool concept.
So incredible. I did a montage for a Lifetime Achievement when they gave that director like a Lifetime Achievement, and he had also done some. Yeah, so Michael Apted had like a neat director who kind of jumped between scripted movies, fiction and nonfiction. Did some really great like fiction movies in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. Did a James Bond movie, and then in between all that was like making really cool documentaries. And there's a lot of cool directors that have done that. Jonathan Demme, one of my favorite directors. He was, while he was making Silence of the Lambs and Married to the Mob and all these like great movies that we've all seen, he was also making incredible documentaries. Yeah, very so cool. That's really cool when a lot, Scorsese does documentaries as well, maybe a little different approach when he does a documentary, but that's really cool. And the Up series is amazing. It's just, it's a longitudinal documentary where they're filming the same people every single 7 years, and you watch them grow in real time. And it's incredible because it does something that only I feel documentaries can do, which is it's this, it takes a slice of time that's almost like a strata of time. Scripted movies can't do that. Only documentaries can like capture time over a long period and show kind of the scope of how time changes people. And that Up series does that better than any of them.
Okay, and then the last one I'll say is this is I love like a documentary on just a specific person. So Bill Cunningham, New York.
Incredible.
Yeah, I really like that story. I guess all these I chose too because they're all different types of documentaries.
Sure.
And the focuses. So it gives you a lot of options to give me a recommendation. You can go any direction. What do you have for me?
Nice. But yeah, I do love the Bill Cunningham movie. He's another like, New York kind of character. And, I love how personal it is. He's like involved in fashion, and that it's a movie that's ostensibly like, it's a fashion documentary, but yet it's really about this like quirky New Yorker that lives in like this weird house or not a weird apartment, and, is friends with all these other kind of randoms, and it's so good. And he's such a unique guy. Okay. So yeah, what's a cool suggestion? I'm going to go with a weird one. There's this director that I really love named Victor Kosakovsky. Okay. And he's he's Russian, right? But he's not that obscure. Okay, so this is not like super obscure. Like he had a movie that was released and was nominated for an Oscar, and he does these incredible movies that are really, really visual and not a lot of dialogue. And he did one called Aquarella, which is about water, and he just filmed it, but it's not water like just. It's water in the most epic way imaginable, like how he shot it. So he's shooting, incredible oceans and waves and ice and glaciers, and there's almost no dialogue and there's almost no story. And you just basically watch this movie in awe of, what water is on planet Earth. It's called Aquarella. Okay. It came out, a few years ago, and it's just incredible. Yeah.
Amazing.
Victor Kosakowski is this like amazing, madman director that's kind of like a Werner Herzog of Russia a little bit.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to watch that. And thanks for coming on. For those listening, like you said, you have your documentary that is in select theaters currently. Can you just say the information of where they can find that and any other thing you want to plug?
Totally.
Your future project as well.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. I said anyone can find the theaters in secretmallapartment.com. I think, like I said, we're probably at going to hit 100 cities or 100 theaters. And so it's likely there's going to be one near you, and I'd love you to see it. And if you like it, let me know, reach out. I'm available, and I'd love you to hear what you thought, any of your listeners or viewers. I'm doing a new movie now in Korea. I'm doing a documentary. It's so different. I'm doing a documentary in South Korea. It's about a school. There's 20 students. It's a boarding high school, 20 students. They are all North Korean defectors. So they're North Korean defectors now living in South Korea in this tiny school. And I'm embedded at the school and kind of making a movie about all these kids who are from North Korea. It's crazy. Yeah, it's really.
I'm excited
really
to
awesome.
see it when it comes out.
Yeah, I've been last year I was in Korea, quite a lot.
Wow.
Not great for my personal life. Yeah, not great for my personal life.
Okay, well, thank you again for coming on. I had a really good time. I had really a great time watching the documentary itself.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, what an honor to be on. Very cool. So just really privileged to talk to you.
One day we'll meet in person.
Totally, and I won't be hiding out in a strange office space in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, totally.
Good evening.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us 5 stars on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. To stay in touch, follow our Instagram page at It's Intermission Time and share with your friends. As always, Intermission is produced by Jazeel Chu and Olivia Dean, and of course, hosted by yours truly, Megan Braun. This episode is brought to you by The Synagogue.